You matched on the app, and the conversation was electric. Witty replies, shared jokes, and that rare vibe that felt promising. Eventually, you worked up the nerve to ask for her number. She gave it, and things felt like they were heading somewhere. You texted her later that night, something casual but clever enough to keep the momentum going. And then, nothing. Hours turned into days and her reply never came. You stare at your phone, hoping, overthinking, spiraling. Did she see the message? Did it even deliver? You start replaying every interaction, dissecting every word. What went wrong? The worst part, she's active everywhere else, posting stories, replying in group chats. But your message, still unopened. It's like Schrodinger's text, both acknowledged and ignored, alive and dead. It feels like a power play, a subtle way of saying, I'm busy. My time matters more than your words. And it doesn't just sting, it triggers something deeper, something primal. In this video, we're diving deep into the psychology of unopened messages, why they hit so hard, what they mean, what they reveal about us. Because let's face it, it's been 3 weeks and you need answers. In our hyper-connected world where smartphones feel like an extension of our very selves, ignoring a message is no longer a simple act, it's a loaded statement. It's a conversation without words, packed with emotions, implications, and unspoken rules. Gone are the days when communication meant face-to-face chats, or the occasional phone call. Now every ping and buzz is a potential connection, or rejection. The expectation of instant responses is baked into our culture. If someone doesn't reply, it's not just a delay, it's a breach of the social contract we've all silently agreed upon. But what happens when those expectations crash into reality? Leaving messages unanswered has become so common it's practically a modern art form. But why do we do it? What drives us to ignore the very tools that were meant to bring us closer? One reason is digital burnout. We live in an age of information overload, where our attention is constantly hijacked by endless notifications, tasks, and distractions. Sometimes, ignoring a message is less about the sender and more about self-preservation, a way to carve out a moment of stillness in the chaos. Then, there's avoidance. Ignoring a message can feel like a quick escape from confrontation or awkwardness, the digital equivalent of crossing the street to avoid an ex. It's not brave, but it's human. And sometimes, let's face it, it's a power play. In the delicate game of digital communication, the person who waits to reply or doesn't reply at all often holds the upper hand. It's a quiet way of asserting control, of signaling that their time is more valuable than yours. But for others, the silence isn't about power or avoidance. It's anxiety. The pressure to craft the perfect response, to strike the right tone, can be paralyzing. What if you say the wrong thing? What if they read it the wrong way? In these moments, leaving the message unopened feels like the safest choice, even if it's not the kindest one. Now, let's flip the perspective and focus on the person waiting, staring at their screen, heart sinking every time a notification turns out to be something else. The emotional toll of an unanswered message can be heavier than we realize, especially when the silence stretches on, or worse, when it's from someone we care about deeply. Feelings of rejection and self-doubt often creep in first. In the void of a response, our minds do what they do best, fill the silence with worst-case scenarios. Did I mess up? Are they upset with me? Am I not worth their time? These questions don't just linger, they carve out space in your thoughts, chipping away at your confidence and feeding any underlying insecurities. Anxiety kicks in next, dragging overthinking along for the ride. Suddenly you're replaying every word of the conversation, analyzing punctuation, and convincing yourself that the timing of your text was all wrong. It's a mental spiral that turns a simple lack of reply into a catastrophe waiting to happen. Frustration is never far behind. It takes 2 seconds to reply. 2 seconds. That perceived lack of effort can feel like a slap in the face, especially when it happens repeatedly. It's not just about the silence, it's what the silence seems to represent. A lack of care, a lack of respect, or worse, a lack of interest. But it doesn't stop there. Prolonged silence has a way of shaking the foundations of trust in relationships. When communication breaks down, even in small ways, it can cast doubt on the strength of the connection itself. And while it might seem trivial in the grand scheme of things, these little fractures can grow over time. And let's not forget the ambiguity of digital communication. Without tone, facial expressions, or any real-time feedback, every pause feels bigger than it is. The gap between delivered and read becomes fertile ground for misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and unnecessary drama. For the sender, an unanswered message isn't just silence. It's a spotlight on every insecurity, every doubt, and every fear they hope to keep in the shadows. It's easy to cast the person who doesn't reply as the villain of this story, but let's pause for a moment. Ignoring a message isn't always an act of malice. It's often a sign of their own inner battles. For many non-responders, guilt is a constant companion. They know the message is there waiting. They know they should reply, but they don't. And the longer they wait, the louder that internal voice of shame grows. It's a classic case of cognitive dissonance, the gap between what they know they should do and what they're actually doing. As the unread messages stack up, so does the pressure. Each notification feels like a tiny weight pressing down, a reminder of unfulfilled obligations. The more time passes, the harder it becomes to face, creating a vicious cycle of procrastination and mounting anxiety. Yet, paradoxically, avoiding messages can bring a fleeting sense of relief. Ignoring the notification means momentarily escaping the pressure to perform, to engage, to meet someone else's expectations. It's a short-lived reprieve, though, often followed by even greater stress, and the creeping realization that avoiding messages is becoming a habit. This avoidance can have real consequences. Over time, it chips away at relationships. Friends grow distant, romantic connections fizzle, and professional opportunities slip through the cracks. Left unchecked, the pattern can spiral into social isolation, reinforcing a loop that's difficult to break. In the end, the silence from the non-responder often says as much about their struggles as it does about their intentions. Behind every unopened message is a human being wrestling with their own complexities, trying to navigate a world of constant demands and impossible expectations. When you send a message, you're doing more than just typing words. You're opening a door to connection, validation, or maybe even rejection. And when that response doesn't come, it's like standing in an empty room, waiting for someone who might never arrive. It's not just the silence, it's the void. Humans are wired for connection. We crave acknowledgement, even in the tiniest gestures. A text left unopened feels like more than a missed reply. It's a question mark about your worth, your importance, and your relationship with the other person. Neuroscience makes it clear. Every time we send a message, our brains anticipate a response. That little dopamine hit is a reward for reaching out. But when the reply never comes, it's like being promised a gift and receiving an empty box instead. The result? Frustration, longing, and a spiral of overthinking. Digital communication, for all its convenience, has made us lonelier than ever. The very tools designed to connect us often leave us more isolated. Without the context of tone, body language, or expression, even a simple delay can feel like rejection, fueling unnecessary conflicts and deepening emotional divides. But here's the takeaway. Understanding the psychology behind texting, why we respond, why we don't, and how it affects us, is the first step toward navigating this new frontier of communication. It's about empathy for yourself and for the other person. Recognizing that sometimes the silence on the other end isn't about you. It's about their own struggles, fears, or boundaries. In the end, texting is just one piece of the puzzle. True connection requires balance, a willingness to step away from screens and engage meaningfully, both online and offline. By doing so, we can reclaim what technology sometimes takes away, the ability to truly see, hear, and understand one another. So the next time you find yourself staring at an unanswered message, remember, it's not just about the text. It's about the complex, deeply human dance of connection and communication. And maybe, just maybe, the real message lies in how we choose to respond to the silence.